Hey guys, we're gonna continue our story series, Tales of the Texas Beekeeper. But the one we're gonna focus on today was the 2021 Polar Vortex that hit Texas. It was a perfect storm uh, to cause the most harm to bees in our area. I mean, that time of the year, it hit in February. Mid-February is when I think it was February 18th is when it hit. And during that time of the year with bees in West Texas, there's still nothing blooming. We haven't gotten our rain yet. Uh, and so bees have been living off of food stores since the start of winter. So let's just say November, December timeframe. So they've been living off of their own food stores from just let's just say December, January, and now we're getting into late February. Most of our bee losses in this area actually occur in the months of February and March because the bees run out of food. We try to leave them and prepare them as much as we can. Uh, but in situations like this, even though there's honey in the hive in certain places, it's not warm enough for them to wander and gather from their own hive. They literally they ball up to generate heat, and the queen's dead in the middle of it. And there's usually around either up in the honey chamber or even down in the brood chamber to keep those larvae and eggs warm enough to continue to grow. So when it gets this cold, they have to ball up and they can't really leave the ball. Uh, Otherwise, they risk getting too cold. And bees are interesting because what they'll do is the bees on the inside of the core of that ball will actually they'll get too hot to the point where they'll rotate to the outside to cool off, and the ones that are cold on the outside will rotate back in to get warm, and there's just constant fluctuation between bees, and they thermal regulate the hive. They generate heat from their wing muscles, but to do this they have to consume honey for carbohydrates to have the energy to do that. So if food at this point late in the winter is light and you have a cold snap this that lasts this long where they don't leave their ball and they consume all the resources around their ball, they can starve. So the time of the year that this hit and for how long it lasted was was just not great. It was not a good situation. So for us, like I said, we only been doing this for 2 years. I hadn't been in a harsh enough winter to really care about winterizing hives because we're in Texas and I didn't think we needed to winterize. I was still very much a new beekeeper uh, that was inexperienced. But we had somewhere around 8 to 10 hives going into that winter storm. And when it hit, and it just wasn't going away, and the temperatures were getting consistently so cold, especially at night, and the wind was constantly blowing. I started to have hives that were dying. Now, I wasn't opening up the hives. You can just, if you do this a little bit longer, you just know when a hive is struggling. You can kind of tilt the back of it to feel the weight. Um, and you can also gauge the heat. Like if you have a heat sensor, you can actually see the heat ball inside of the hive. And when we went out, I think it was day 2 or 3 of the storm, and these hives were just dead. And I had 3 hives left. So what I did is I moved all of those hives, those 3 hives that were remaining, I moved them into my garage. And I put hardware cloth over the entrances so they couldn't get out if it got too warm. Well, it was still so cold in the garage that I lost another hive. And things were getting drastic. And women who watch this channel, you're going to get a good, I guess, hopefully a good laugh out of this. But I moved the 2 remaining beehives into the laundry room of our house. Now, there's hardware cloth on it, so the bees weren't getting out, but we moved them into the house, and I turned a space heater on to heat up the laundry room to just get these bees at a temperature where they can survive. And you're not supposed to do that. I'm not going to go into depth on why you're not supposed to do that typically in cold weather, but this was an extreme case. If y'all want to comment and ask questions on why this isn't a great move for bees, I can explain that in the comments. But my wife was not too thrilled to have two full-size beehives in our laundry room. And the space heater, I probably didn't need the space heater because bees don't like to defecate in their hive. So when it gets warm enough, they want to go out and fly and defecate. And they want to, if it gets too warm, they want to go forage. So I don't know what heat it was in the room, but it was probably well above 70 with that space heater. And so those bees were wanting out, and you could hear them roaring in their hives. And that definitely made the women in my house very nervous because they were worried that if it got knocked over or if they found a hole that they can get out of, we'd have bees all in our house. So that is not a normal practice. It is better to winterize your hive to survive in the outdoors in those situations and to give them enough food beforehand. Uh, but when you're a new beekeeper, you improvise and you try to do what's best. Uh, those two hives did end up surviving that storm, and that storm had some ramifications to it. We had just done a lot of removals that year because it was during a COVID year. We had done a lot of removals, had a lot of hives that were coming in still, and when this happened, following coming into that, like bees like to swarm, like feral hives around town, just like to start swarming around mid-March, really all the way through June. And after this storm, there weren't many removal calls. Uh, Not a whole lot of bees in the Lubbock area survived that storm. And I knew it. I knew they didn't, not because I was out looking for them, but it's just people weren't calling us anymore for removals, and that was strange. Given the previous year, it was just overwhelming. We were getting 3 or 4 calls a day, and we went from that to maybe we got one every 2 weeks. Uh, and the hive removals that I was being offered, when I would go check on them, the hives that made it through that storm were incredibly weak and had to be like they had to be nursed back to health over several months. So anyway, that was a pretty unique story. That polar vortex, as a side note, also got so cold that the Playa Lakes froze over, and the Texas Tech hockey team literally played pond hockey on the Playa Lakes. And they eventually got in trouble with the police department for doing that because it wasn't safe. But those ponds were so solid of ice. I mean, just the first few inches, I guess, were solid enough that you could play hockey on it. Anyway, that was your story for today. The good old polar vortex and keeping beehives in the laundry room, which I don't think I'll ever get away with again. All right, thanks.